Welcome, everyone, to the Women in Technology Lunch at Ignite. We're super excited to be having this inaugural event and welcoming all of you to join us here today for our guest speaker, Brenna Berman, the CIO for the City of Chicago, and then later for a panel of Microsoft women who all have had enormously interesting experiences and gained many experiences over the time in their careers that we think will be useful to you in making choices for yours. When we think about change, and that's our theme for today, is how change creates opportunity, we believe that in moments of change, there are gaps that exist, gaps that ask to be filled. And what we're going to talk about is the ways in which we can use those gaps and those moments to look for places to do new things. Innovation has been a theme for us throughout this time at Ignite. We're super excited about the ways that we're driving technology forward today. But we believe that driving the products forward and driving technology forward is only part of the puzzle. The most important thing is how we come forward, how our careers come forward, and how we continue to make this a personal experience, how we take technology change and innovation and turn it into business value and customer experience, and all of the ways in which technology in general informs our society and leads us forward. So with that, I'd like to turn the mic over to Brenna Berman, as I say, the CIO for the City of Chicago. Brenna has a phenomenal track record.
So thank you very much. So first I'm going to do a little sound check. Can people hear me?
No.
No.
Can you put your mic up higher?
I can hear you. Oh, that sounds better. There we go. So thank you so much for the introduction. So I'm Brenna Berman. I have the honor and privilege of serving as the City of Chicago's CIO. And thank you so much for spending the last couple of days here in the city. For those of you that are from Seattle, we brought some weather in for you that you should be familiar with. So a little bit of background on me. I do live here in the city. So for those of you familiar with this map, I live on the near west side, kind of in the middle there, a little bit off to the side. I'm raising two young boys here in Chicago, 2 and 4, so I get up really early in the morning. But they are great. And my husband runs his own company, which is kind of a construction company. So the boys love him more, frankly, because he has trucks. And as CIO of the city, I actually get to do sort of 3 distinct things that frankly, not every CIO in the world gets to do. So some of the things I get to do, which most CIOs do, I keep the email running. I run about 350 databases. There's lots of networking. There's lots of cabling. There's lots of enterprise and local applications, many of which bear the Microsoft name. Thank you very much. I also actually get to run one of the most innovative predictive analytics programs of any city in the world. And I say that with actually a huge amount of pride and thanks to my team. We use predictive analytics to do everything from predict where rats are going to be in the city. So hopefully you didn't see any when you were here because we get to them first. To looking at how we can use predictive analytics to predict where restaurants may have infractions that could make you sick, to where predictive analytics can help us do any kind of city service better. And then one of the most exciting parts of my job is I get to work with the mayor to use technology to drive economic development here in the city. So unlike some CIOs that only get to focus on sort of those internal technology operational issues, I actually get to focus on outward technology that changes the city. So it's very exciting. But what we're going to talk about today, change and opportunity. But how I titled this, How I Got Here from There. And I'll fill in those blanks in just a minute. And I'm actually very far away from how we move the slides along. Cable management. So what I showed you just a minute ago was that traditional view of Chicago, all of those neighborhoods. And when we talked a minute ago in the introduction was how change can create opportunity. But if we stop and think for a minute, change doesn't necessarily have to open up a door to opportunity, right? Change can actually create a lot of reactions. It can make you nervous, can create stress, can actually paralyze you from taking action. So without taking a moment to think about what change is creating or the situation that it is presenting to you, change may not necessarily actually just lay opportunities at your feet. You may actually have to work at it a little bit. So over the next 20 minutes or so before we get into the panel, I'm actually going to go through a couple of examples from my life just to lay a couple of things out that hopefully will give some not pointers necessarily, but lay out a couple of examples where I've used change to move my career forward, sometimes in the right direction, sometimes where I've stopped back and thought about it, and maybe you should have gone another direction. But hopefully give us a platform to ask some questions and have some conversations with the panel. And sometimes it's really perspective on the change that opens the opportunity. So a minute ago, we looked at a map of Chicago in that traditional community view. Chicago has 77 communities, and if you run into a Chicagoan, there might be some in the room, and you ask us where we're from, we'll give you our community name. I'm from the West Loop. Some people might tell you they're from Lawndale, they're from Lakeview. But there's another way to look at Chicago, and one of those is the way that, as the CIO, I look at it, and that's the map you're seeing right here. So this is the map of Chicago, the big star in the middle, which I actually did not put there. But this actually indicates, because Chicago is the world's largest commercial internet exchange point by volume. Most of you probably didn't know that because you probably don't stare at commercial internet exchange maps the way I do. But when I saw this map, it actually had me take a different look at Chicago than I'd ever done before. And I actually came across this map 6 or 7 years ago, but while I was still working for IBM. I spent about a decade at IBM before I joined the mayor's administration. And I was looking at this map and realized, gee, I always viewed Chicago as a city that I like to live in because it has great restaurants, good shopping, great neighborhoods where people really identify with their neighbors and the individual cultures that the neighborhoods have. I never really viewed it as a place that had a really strong foundation for tech growth. And when you see this map, you really start to think about it that way. And this is something that actually the mayor focuses on quite a bit. And when we start to look at it this way, you realize that that kind of foundation, where there's such internet strength, is the kind of foundation that can drive 49,000 new digital jobs in the last year, a new tech startup every day, and a focus on, frankly, IoT startups that we think is going to actually propel Chicago into economic growth for the next generation that's going to change our economy. Now, I give this example because this is actually the foundation for our technology jobs plan that governs most of what I do with that second third of my job that I talked about. And it was this perspective that frankly compelled me to start thinking about a job in Chicago driven by tech. Because most of my time with IBM, actually all of my time with IBM, was spent living in Chicago but working somewhere else in the world, because I didn't really view Chicago as a place where you could have a technology innovation job. There's lots of tech companies here. IBM has an office, Microsoft has an office, Oracle has an office, but there wasn't really huge innovation here, or at least I didn't think there was a decade ago when I was planning out my career. But if you look at this map, right, you might think a little bit differently about Chicago when you realize we have more internet volume passing through our cables in this city than anywhere else in the world, and we now use that volume to drive our digital economy. And the mayor certainly views us as the center of the technology universe, and we're now competing in the investments that we make to make everybody else see us that way. But I wasn't born here, much to some of my neighbors' dismay. I was actually born about 2 hours south of a little dot near Boston. And the most frequent question I get from people who find out I'm the CIO for the city of Chicago is, well, how did you get here? Right? How did you get that job? Because it's a relatively unique job, right? There's only one of me in the city. There's only one CIO for most of the big cities in the country. How did you get that job? And a lot of people say, wow, you're so lucky to have that job. Now, I certainly feel privileged to serve the people of Chicago, but luck had nothing to do with getting here. The only thing I think I've ever been lucky about, now I will tell you the only luck I've ever had is the parents I ended up with. I didn't get to pick them. And I will tell you, I have a fabulous mom and dad. But I have a certain perspective on luck. Now, I also have 8 years of Latin class behind me. Thank you very much. Which is sometimes useful, and is mostly useful when I need a good quote to run a presentation. So, and I love that they call him Seneca the Younger. No one ever found Seneca the Elder, but luck is a matter of preparation meeting opportunity. I am the most over-prepared person you will ever meet for anything I ever do. And usually this was a really good thing. I have overstudied for every exam. I have the best grocery list you will ever see. I am over-prepared for everything. But along the way, I actually learned that you need to pepper preparation with a really good dose of flexibility, because you will often, sort of a lighthearted example, get to the grocery store and they will be out of half of the things you need on your list, and you still need to cook dinner. So while I don't believe that luck has really gotten me anywhere, being flexible in the opportunities presented to me has. So I'll give a quick example from my time at IBM. I have always been focused on working in government. Most of my clients, when I was a consultant, were public sector. I now am serving in government directly, and am fairly sure that most of my career going forward will have a public service bent to it. However, I had reached that point in my career when I had been working on consulting teams, et cetera, and had not yet had that management experience that you reach that point in your career that you begin to crave. I'm sure some of you sort of share that. You're either at that point where you want to make that step, or looking back, you remember where you were at that tipping point. And a person that I had worked with from IBM's software group called me, and he had an assignment that he was hoping that I would take. It was for 4 months in the summer. It happened to be in Paris, which was a little appealing, I'll admit that. But it was with a French car manufacturer. There's only a couple, so it's not particularly hard to guess, but it really doesn't matter to the story. That has nothing to do with government, right? I was absolutely building a career and a skill set based on leveraging advanced technologies to help governments change their business models to reach their clients, their residents, their voters in a better way. So this was an opportunity that was mostly appealing because it was in Paris for the summer. That's not a good reason, really, to take a job. It was not on my career path. It was not in government. It was not for my management team, so it was going to not really, it seemed, help in my interests in getting promoted or building my career path in IBM. And he said, well, really think about it. Here's the aspects of the job. It was a direct consulting position to the CEO and the chief strategy officer for that car manufacturing company. And 3 months in Paris in the summer. So I thought about it. I said, well, it's not in my career path. Like, right, very prepared, very focused, good list. But direct consulting experience with senior management of a company. I hadn't had that yet. So I went and had a really good summer in Paris. And got that management experience, that direct exposure to senior management that I was struggling to get on my government path, and was able to add that to my resume. And lo and behold, when I came back to my core team, the next time an assignment came up in my team that was direct work with senior management, now in government on my career path, I had that check in the box of having done the consulting work with senior management. So that's the flexibility. And then coming back to my current career path of how I got from here to there, talk about flexibility. 10 years at IBM, had what I felt was a very, very good career there. And for those of you that do work directly for Microsoft, right, you know what it's like to work in a large company where you're building an excellent network, where you can move from team to team and build an excellent skill set while staying within the confines of a very well-recognized, well-capitalized, warm, wonderful company. And that's where I was at IBM. I was very happy. They supported my needs when I added a child to my family and needed to change my travel schedule, et cetera. And then the city of Chicago had a historical election. We had had the same mayor for 25 years. He decided not to run again, and then we elected a new mayor. I was about to use a descriptor for him, and I decided there are just far too many to choose from. And Mayor Emanuel came into office. He was going through transition, and I got a phone call from a friend to ask me to spend a little bit of time at night on a volunteer position in the transition team. I said, sure, I like government. I'm home for the week. I'll come in. And I met the mayor. If any of you have ever met him, you will know that there is probably no one closer in the city of Chicago to a force of nature than that man. And when he says, oh, nice to meet you, you should come in and, see if we've got a job for you. It's not a small question. And I said, oh, yeah, whatever, blah, blah, blah. I volunteered, whatever. And then he called. That's scary. 10 years of safe, productive, build my path on my list, well prepared, lots of skills, to jumping into change the city, change the future, change everything. And just to give you an idea, my husband had just started his own startup. Read that, no paycheck. IBM pays pretty well. Government pays less well. Less paycheck. Just bought a new house. But exciting to take your new skills somewhere else and exciting to build the new future of your home. And there's the flexibility to take immense change and turn it into huge opportunity. And to take you to a quote from my favorite person, one of my favorite people. And again about luck. Luck to me is hard work and realizing what is opportunity and what isn't. So, hard work, starting a new administration, and realizing what is an opportunity and what isn't. I was not invited to join the administration in a technology capacity. So I've been with IBM for 10 years. It's a technology company, in case you haven't heard of it. I had been spending 10 years using technology to change government, and I was invited to join the budget director, who is an extraordinary woman. She is incredibly smart, she's incredibly driven, and she is an incredibly strong manager. She invited me to come on board as her deputy and work through what was probably the most active budget that the city had seen in many years. We changed probably every service that the city delivered in that budget. And what she saw in me was strong analytical skills, I think. Strong analytical skills, the ability to help her change her office, and the ability to work quickly because we came into office in May and the first budget had to be delivered to the city council in October. That's a really tight window. But that is not a technology job. That is a very strong pivot and something that many people would not necessarily view as an opportunity. So what I would suggest here to you is the ability to focus on two things to be able to evaluate whether something is an opportunity. One, know in yourself what you want to do. And two, recognize the amount of hard work and investment required to actually realize the investment on an opportunity. Because change opens doors. What makes that door an opportunity is the investment that you make in it, right? An option is an option. An opportunity is an investment. So I said yes, not knowing what the salary was. My husband would have a very different perspective on this entire conversation. But I said yes, and I worked for the hardest year I have probably ever worked in my entire life. And that includes every year of college, every year of graduate school, the first year of every one of my kids' lives, which are very hard without a lot of sleep. And it was probably the best, most advantageous year of my entire career. And I think I've worked for, 20 years now? Because of the amount that I gained from the investment I put in. So I was not sure that was the right decision to make because I went from a very good career at IBM where I was fairly sure what my career path was in terms of their investment in me and my investment in them, and it was very sure. I was going up, I knew where I was going to go, I had options, I had people who supported me, I had a great network of mentors and friends and executives that were supporting me in my growth, which I've been able to maintain externally, which has been fabulous, to the great unknown that didn't meet my skill set much. And it invested a lot of hard work in a lot of change to realize a strong investment in that opportunity. So be prepared to know yourself and what you want and jump in with both feet and work very, very hard, because hard work and the ability to recognize opportunity is key to get out the investment for what you put in. And then everything can change again because I missed a play date. And I will tell you how that happened. So this is a pop culture pop quiz. Who remembers the haircut that made it onto CNN the next day? It's a bit of a test on how old people are. Thank you. Someone has to remember. So at the end of the second season of Felicity, which I was not an avid watcher of, I caught it on the news the next day, Felicity, the character, who was played by Kerry Russell, had streaming curly hair, very much like Shakira, for those of you who don't know her. And she cut it all off. Now, I'm sure several of us in the room have had dramatic haircuts after something in our lives. We've all done it once or twice. We didn't make the news because of it, and I'm sure, so Felicity was on, WGN or some, secondary television station. I'm sure they didn't think it was going to make it on. It was on CNN the next day. It got a mention on, all the ABC-type news shows the next morning. I'm sure they had no idea that a haircut on a teeny bopper television show was going to make news the next day. And it did. And it did actually spark a conversation, and there have been other conversations about why women's hair matters. And I don't know about you, I'm lucky if my hair stays, in place the next day, especially in this kind of weather, and I hope to God my hair doesn't actually matter. But what did matter was the fact that this small decision she made actually had repercussions into the next season. It was bizarre. And it sparked this conversation, actually, with these sort of talking heads and these philosophers and psychologists that show up on these news shows about whether or not tiny changes in your life actually have big repercussions. And I use this quote just to sort of make a point that small changes can have big impacts on your life. And things you can do may actually matter more than you think. So think about the impact of little things you do, and then, more importantly, evaluate that impact and see if they achieved what you meant, because you might want to adjust, and adjusting is okay. So I give you another example. So I was hanging out in the budget office, and I missed a play date. And I point this out just because I was supposed to go on a play date with the gentleman who was our chief data officer. We had kids the same age. We would meet on Sundays. The kids would go to the park. And he was actually thinking about leaving the administration just because that was in his career path. And we had been talking about that. Little did I know he had been talking to the mayor about the fact that how his leaving would have an effect and how they would fill in that gap. And that conversation with the mayor had led to the gaps in our administration around internal technology, because in the first year, we had not tackled that. We had tackled external technology, how the city was going to use technology around economic development, but not our own internal operational technology. And as many of you will know, you can't change any business process these days without fixing the technology underneath that supports it. And we were trying to do that. It was a problem. And the old CIO, who had not been changed with the administration, was just not the right fit. And so basically, the mayor had explained to the chief data officer that he would let him move on in his career. It's great to be mayor. He would let him move on in his career if he got me to be the CIO. And the point of that play date was he was going to convince me I should do this. My son overslept in his nap. I did not go to the play date. And the CDO basically told the mayor that everything was all set. Do never ever miss a play date. I get on the elevator Monday morning at work. I run into the chief policy officer, who's another friend of mine, who says, "It's fantastic, you're going to go be the CIO." I am open to this. The big problem is no one has told my boss, who runs, this is the budget director. Now, government's a little bit different than the private sector, but I think the best thing I can say about this is the budget director owns all the money. So not only is she a powerful, formidable woman who I respect deeply and have learned more from in the last year than any other year in my career, but I now have to tell her I'm leaving after a year of her investing in me, right, in her own transformation of her own department. But I'm leaving. I'm going into a job where I likely am going to need more money from her than she has thought about. So I've made her angry. I want more money, and nobody's told her, and I have to be the messenger for that. This was a bad day. And we go through a bunch of thinking, restructuring. I take the job. So this is how I got here from there to here. That's how I end up as CIO, as I missed a play date. So sometimes opportunities find you without you knowing it. And we begin to think about how to restructure IT in the city of Chicago. And at the time, we had 3 executive IT positions that were essentially parallel across the city. We had a CIO, we had a CTO, which was, unlike in the traditional role in most of the private sector, was doing a sort of visionary, out in public economic development sort of role. And we had a chief data officer, and they were all parallel. They all reported to the mayor, and they were not working in concert. And I can tell you, if you were an outside party, that would be really hard to figure out, and really hard to figure out how to engage with us. And they did not work well together as a role. As people they did, but as a role, as roles, they did not work well together. And so, as a tactical matter, when I came in and transitioned out of the budget office into the Department of Innovation and Technology, which is the name of my department, I took those 2 other roles with me and rolled them into my department. We did it tactically at first, and sort of on the way realized we just made a big strategic change. It was a little change on paper internally for us in government, and realized externally for the people that watched us and worked with us, we actually made a huge change, and we didn't bother to communicate it. So essentially, we just gave ourselves a really big haircut and didn't tell anybody. And to give you an idea of the implications, this has become a topic of conferences at other CIOs in other cities who want to know why we've made this change and what the impact has been, and should other cities copy us. Like, we literally sort of did this on the way to me taking this job, because other people were leaving and things got shifted, and we just sort of reset the plates. So we finally stepped back and took a moment to evaluate if it mattered and if it turned out well, and it has for us. But I make this point because change can open opportunities that you step into inadvertently. And in this case, it worked out well, but that's not always the case. So I give a cautionary tale here to be careful that you don't step backwards into an opportunity that you don't mean to take, because it may not always turn out well. Because in this case, I stumbled into 2 opportunities that have turned out extremely well, but that may not have been the case in every time. So I caution you to be careful in taking opportunities that are inadvertent. So one last note around opportunity is missed by most people because it is dressed in overalls and looks like work. Now, we've already talked about the hard work you need to put in to capitalize on an opportunity you choose. This is a slight derivative of that in suggesting that you put work into recognizing the opportunities that go by you every day. The opportunities to connect with someone, not because they may be able to offer you something, but because they are just valuable in building out the mosaic of people that complete the world that you're part of. One of the most important parts of my job is recognizing the opportunities I have every day to improve the performance of my department and improve the connections that I have in the job that I do for the residents of this city. Sometimes it's the opportunity I have to respond to some of the direct emails that I get from a resident who has a question or a suggestion. It may only take a minute or two, and often it is a minute or two that I may think I don't have, and it's the best minute or two that I spend. And I take time every day to try and think of the one or two ways that I can do my job better, and that minute I spend thinking about the opportunities that I am missing that I should find is work that I try to get better at every day. So there's the work you do to capitalize on the opportunity you've chosen to take, but there's the work that you should also do to get better at recognizing the opportunities, because not all of them come dressed in a pretty sign that says, "I'm your next opportunity." Some of them come not quite ready to be recognized, and you need to help them come forward and make themselves known to you. So I think that's been my experience with the relationship between the ever-changing, that's wrong, but that's been my experience with how change can bring opportunities forward, and the fact that you need to be active in making that happen. But now I think actually we'll hear from 3 other amazing women and their experiences with change and opportunity, and have some chances for questions at the end of that from all of you. So it's been such a pleasure to be here with you. I thank you for that opportunity, and I'm excited now for the dialogue that we'll have after this. So thank you so much.
So what I'd like to do first is have our panelists actually introduce themselves. We're going to start with Julia White. Julia, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I'm Julia White. It is great to be here. I'm at Microsoft. I am a general manager in the Office division. I spend all my days and nights thinking about Office and Office 365, which I love. I've been at Microsoft for 14 years. And on a personal note, I have 2 children. I have an 11 and an 8-year-old.
Great. And Natalia Miscavicius?
Hi, I'm Natalia Miscavicius. It's a pleasure to be here as well. I am also from Microsoft. Haven't been here as long as Julia, just 11 years, about 11 and a half. And I'm a group program manager for a new product that you may have heard of at this conference, the Microsoft Azure Stack. So I work in technology, really driving program management features for bringing Azure service delivery to on-premises environments. I have 1 son, and I'm a single mom.
And Stephanie Ferguson.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Ferguson, and I am General Manager in Cloud and Enterprise. That's the world of Azure, the world of Server, System Center, SQL, all that fun stuff. I've worked at Microsoft for 19 years. I've had a very non-linear route in my career, and it's been fun. I started before Microsoft years back at IBM as a programmer.
Excellent.
I have 2 children. I have a 16-year-old daughter who just started driving, and it's scary and wonderful all at once. And I have a 14-year-old son.
Great, thank you so much. So I think what we'd like to do first is, I'd like to have you each talk a little bit about your greatest opportunities and how you really saw those coming to you. I'm going to start actually with Stephanie.
Great, wow. Greatest opportunities. I think that, I think I've had many wonderful opportunities in my career. Kind of picking up on some of what you talked about, Brenna. I think my favorite opportunities have come with change, and maybe slightly unexpectedly. If I think through a couple of them, years back we were running marketing at Microsoft, and we had it structured a very specific way, and there were central marketing groups, and that's all there was. But we recognized we needed to change, and so we blew up marketing and created a different structure. We had central groups and subsidiary groups, so central group, US group. And nobody wanted to go to those US groups because they seemed very foreign and they seemed very scary. But I was asked if I wanted to go run Windows in one of those groups, and I said, yeah, absolutely. That sounds like fun. That sounds just different. As it turns out, by saying yes to that, I got to run the XP launch as the lead subsidiary, the lead piece of the puzzle in the whole world. I got to build a team from 0 to 21. I got to just do so many fun and wonderful things and learn a ton about marketing. So I think opportunities come maybe when you least expect them, and you just have to be open to them and maybe take a little bit of a risk, knowing what could be ahead.
It's great. Julia, do you want to talk a little bit about your next?
Yeah, I was thinking about when opportunities come, and I think for me it was the moments when I believed in myself. Whether it was, I was thinking back in 8th grade, I decided that I wanted to go to Stanford. And my dad was like, I think that's great. And he believed in me, and I was like, I'm doing this thing. And it actually worked out. But I hadn't believed in myself, I wouldn't have carved that path forward on that moment.
Right.
And in a career sense, I've had a few really amazing opportunities to take jobs that I was definitely not qualified for in similar ways. And I was like, wow, I don't know how to do that at all. But I was like, you know what? I'm going to believe in myself. We're going to do this thing. And I took the leap, and I took the faith, and it worked out really favorably. I got new growth experiences, new networks, really interesting opportunities. But it was always those moments when I kind of regrouped and like, nope, I got this. I'm going to do this. I'm going to believe in myself. If they're going to believe in me, I'm going to do it too, and lean into it on that front.
Natalia, does that resonate with you as well?
Absolutely. I think for me, a lot of the change, I've actually had recent change, I would say, so I could talk about that. I actually have a long career working with partners and customers, and I managed a partner and customer ecosystem team. But 6 months ago, I took an opportunity, and just like Julia, had confidence in myself to do something very different, and took that opportunity to take the role for the program management of the new product, the Azure Stack. It was a big change for me, and it required me having confidence in myself, confidence that my skills would translate, because I think sometimes people don't see that translation very often. So the skills translated, and we were able to announce this week. So it was a great opportunity.
Super exciting. And Brenna, was there anything that you wanted to add? I mean, because we know a lot about your greatest opportunity,
Yeah.
I think.
No, I think the point about confidence is a really good one, that especially when you go after a role, it is an offer to you, when you have to go after it, you sometimes have to make it very clear to the person who might be in charge of that role that you want, that you're ready for it, that you can do it, and sell to them that you have the capabilities, you have the confidence to do it, and here's why, that you have the skills, that they do translate. That's a really good point. Because they may not see it until you make them see it.
Right, and I think, and what's been great is that all of you are highlighting that openness to opportunity and openness to taking new paths, and I think that that's so important. I wonder, Brenna, you talked a lot about that balance of being prepared and planning versus taking the unexpected, and I wonder if any of our other panelists had moments when the plan kind of had to, and I think you've said the plan kind of had to go out the window. So maybe, Julia, would you like to start there?
Yeah, I think my approach on being opportunistic and planful is I've always had the kind of the long-term view of like what do I want in the long term, and I update that every 5, 8 years, whenever I feel like okay, in the next thing I've gotten closer, so I got to make it the next farther thing out. But it's usually the 10-year job that I want. That's about the range I look at, and then I think there's a lot of ways to get there. And there's some serendipity along the way, and there's some go and sell yourself along the way. But as long as it kind of is getting me towards that,
right.
And ultimately too, that it's something I enjoy. I think if you're not enjoying what you're doing, you're not going to be great at it.
Right.
And so prioritizing that too. But kind of had the long term as an evaluative lens, but then stay very open and flexible to people and change and opportunities, because I think it is a combination of serendipity for sure, and timing and what you know.
Right, and Stephanie, does that work? Does that make sense for you in that balance?
Yeah, I think I've taken a fairly similar approach. I think about long term, where do I want to go generally? And then when I take a job, I think always before I say yes to that job about where that job could lead me. And my rule is I need to have at least a couple other wonderful steps that could come after that job that would lead me towards my long-term kind of place I want to be. Now, does it go that way? Absolutely not, because new things arise, new opportunities land on your lap. But if you kind of judge a job and say, does this really seem like a step, and then the next step are here? Seems like a reasonable way to do it.
Right. And Natalia, is that in your experience?
So my experience may be a little different. So single mom, I think that sometimes it's not just the career opportunities that'll drive some of the change. I know for me, I'm originally from Chicago. Great to be back here in this great city. And as a single mom, I was working for a company where I was traveling probably 4 or 5 days a week. And with a young child who's 4 years old, it was very challenging. So for me, that actually had me rethink some of the opportunities that I had, and opportunities presented itself to move to Redmond, work at Microsoft, and for me, that was a way that I could look at a longer-term career, but then also that would balance with my work-life needs.
Right, which is a great transition actually into a general topic about thinking about work-life balance and, you know, how you manage the children and the career and all of the different things that you want to do and all of the different directions that you want to go in. And Brenna, have you? I
am I first?
You have a 4-year-old, so there's that.
A 2-year-old.
Yeah.
Why am I first? I feel like I work on work-life balance every day, and some days are better than others. And it feels like you guys have older kids, so I'm hoping to learn something on this. Yeah, much wiser. But one thing I know I've done is I've shrunk the list of things I'm trying to balance down to the things that I know are important to me, and that's made it much easier to say no, which is something I am not particularly good at naturally. And I've also, there are things that are important to me. Quality time with my children are important, or is important. Finding something that makes me feel like I'm giving back to my community is important. So finding an event that my children can come to that is giving back to the community. So I'm finding some different ways to sort of skin the cat, if you will. And some days that works and some days it doesn't. So.
Yeah, and I think that that's really been the secret for I imagine for all of us is the days that it works and the days that it doesn't. I don't know, Stephanie, if you want to talk a little bit about work-life balance and your approach?
Sure. I think the biggest learning I've had on work-life balance is there's not just one definition of it. Each person finds his or her own definition of work-life balance. And the reason we're balancing work and life is because we want rich lives. So I want to be a mom. I want a family. And I want work, and I don't want to give up either of those things, and my life will be richer because I have both of them. So you just have to keep that perspective and find your own way. I think you rely heavily on your friends to keep you sane at times. And the other thing I'd say is my kids refresh me every time I see them. I think it makes me a better person at work. It's the old everything you ever needed to know about managing people you learn from being a parent. It's true some days, and it makes me better in both places. Right. So you have to find your own approach.
Absolutely. And Julia, I'm sure you find your own ways of building your energy and keeping that balance, right?
Yeah, I think I definitely, you have to take, in my view, you have to take the long view on this one. Like week to week, day to day, man, it's not balanced. But over the long view, if I look back over a month or 6 months or a year, I'm like, okay, I feel like I had the time spent on the priorities in the right way. But like this week's hard. I'm not going to see my kids all week. So next week, I'm going to spend a lot of time with them and kind of yin and yang and then give yourself permission to do that.
That's true too.
And then I'm also, I'm really big on like set your boundaries and unapologetically. And I'm like, I don't sneak out of work and try and pretend like I'm not. I'm like, I'm leaving, I'm seeing my kids, I'm not thinking about work, I'm not talking about work, I'm not on my phone, I'm with my kids, and then when I'm done, I'm back on. And I'm not apologizing for that, and there's a point where that doesn't work for the company, then it doesn't work for me either. But I'm not going to stress about it and feel guilty about it, and that's so, like, it takes all that energy that I can instead be investing with my kids or with my job or with my friends. And so letting yourself be okay with that and not feel apologetic and not carry guilt and not carry question about whether you're doing the right thing, like just set your boundaries, live them, and don't spend energy on that after you've decided that crunch. I think that helps. And then I'm also just a really fierce compartmentalizer. When I'm with my kids, I am with my kids, and when I'm at work, I am at work. And you have to have systems that make that work. So I have a school that I love and trust, and my kids are there. I don't even think about their concerns. They are well taken care of, and I can focus on my job, and vice versa. And so I think the systems has to work for you as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Did you have follow-on thoughts, Natalia?
I couldn't agree with more with what the ladies have said. I think finding that balance for work and life is different for every person. I think it's understanding your work style, understanding your priorities. Like Brenna said, sometimes it means letting go of some things. I know my house may not be that clean, but I do spend quality time with my son, and I enjoy that, and I make sure when I'm with him, it is quality time with him. I spend time, I think we were talking about walking kids to school or driving kids to school. That can be an incredible time to actually bond with your child. But when I get to work, I'm all in at work as well.
Yeah, and I think, and that's I think super important, is this idea that balance doesn't mean juggling it all simultaneously. It's the taking the moment to do the thing you're doing in that moment. I want to transition a little bit and talk about technology, because we're women in technology, and some of these concerns are specific to the field that we're in. This is a time of great change. I think that for all of us who work in this field, the accelerated pace is actually quite extraordinary. So I wondered if some of the women on our panel would like to talk about how that accelerated pace is affecting career choices and affecting opportunity. Julia's nodding a lot, so I'm going to start with you.
I got a point of view.
You made eye contact. No, there you go.
No, but it's interesting being on business, and I think transition from an on-premises business with Exchange and SharePoint and Skype into Office 365 and the cloud. And now, you were talking about earlier, I'd say the majority, or almost 40-50% of my conversations with CIOs now are not about Exchange architecture and the networking. It's about, man, I have these fantastic productivity tools now in my organization, and now I need to actually work with my employees, and I need my IT staff to go work with my employees on how to be more productive, how to use meeting time more productively, how to get more out of this, how to work virtually in an effective way. And those are people skills, and that is change and engagement and collaboration skills. And that, to me, is an amazing opportunity for women in IT of, like, we have, generically speaking, strong EQ and collaboration skills that can help drive change and bring people along on a journey. And I see an amazing opportunity for that being, as we move increasingly into the cloud, an opportunity we can all seize.
Yeah, Stephanie, how have you seen it?
Yeah, I'm just going to pile right on top of that. We recently, Julie and I together, did some sessions with CIOs and senior IT decision makers, and I sat at a table with a set of them, and one of the men actually raised his hand and said, I don't hire for deep technical skills anymore. I actually hire for the ability to drive change and collaborate with other people, because that's what my IT department needs to do. Anyone can learn a specific skill. And I thought to myself, whoa, this is an amazing opportunity for women. It's an amazing opportunity for everyone, but to your point, women have this EQ, capability that we're all known for. So.
Right. And Brenna, are you seeing that change in the way that you approach hiring for people?
It's absolutely true. I mentioned before, we have this intense analytics program, and we just hired, she'll be starting in like 2 weeks, we can't wait, this woman who will be responsible for helping our department embed the algorithms, which are hard enough to build, but the hardest part is embedding those algorithms in the department's business processes, right? Because it will change how they do business, how their people work, how their business models work, how they engage with residents. And that cultural change, the organizational change, is much, much harder than building the technology. Yeah. It's hard enough to hire a data engineer. It's much harder to hire someone who understands what that engineering does to the people. And these are people who have done the same thing for 30 years.
Right.
So it's incredibly hard.
Right. And Natalia, how are you seeing that evolve, in the ways that the technology landscape is changing?
I am absolutely seeing it everywhere as well. So I work more on the infrastructure side. And I think from that perspective, you're seeing a lot of business units driving IT and change. And that does drive some collaboration needs. It drives people to understand analytics, the data, the ROI, and that's coupled with the infrastructure as well. So I'm seeing women actually grow very quickly there because of those collaboration skills, because of their ability to be able to cross multiple different types of teams and bring those together.
Yeah, and that, which actually is a nice transition to it. We picked some questions from the audience early on, so we have a couple here that we want to bring in. This idea of, are there areas in technology where you're seeing concentrated growth of opportunity for women versus areas that might not be growing as fast where you'd like to see more growth? And I'm actually going to start with Stephanie.
Yeah, I think it's going to go back to where we just were. I think that it's funny, I kind of look across the space for cloud and enterprise, and I look internally at Microsoft and also with some of our customers. Certainly in some of this change management, I see women stepping up. Data is a really interesting space. I'm seeing a lot more women in data. I think it may be that combination of taking technology and making technology really practical and usable for business, but that'd be one place that just pops to mind right away when you ask that question.
Absolutely. And maybe Julia, if you want to follow on?
I'd say, I haven't seen it statistically yet, but it's more of the opportunity, I think, that lies ahead in terms of the cloud transition around the productivity space, for sure.
Yeah. And Natalia?
Yeah, I would say similarly, as I look at it, if you look at service delivery, and that's what the cloud offers, I think I've seen, and this is anecdotal, but I've seen there's opportunities more for women. To the second part of your question, I think where I'd love to see more women growing is more in the development space. We're fortunate, I know. Yep. There's one of my peers and coworkers, Joy Chick at Microsoft. She was just promoted to a technical fellow, so it's really great to see strong leaders and role models there. But I'd love to see more people in development as women.
That's fantastic. Brenna, where would you like to see change, or where are you seeing growth?
I mean, I would echo everything we've heard, but then specifically in the data side, you can't hire a data engineer fast enough. Specifically on the data engineering side, you can't get them fast enough.
Right. And I think that idea of growth of opportunity generally should mean growth of opportunity for women specifically. So another question that we had was, if there are so few women in IT, how can we motivate younger women to join the field and to participate? And I'm going to go ahead and start with Natalia.
So I think it's great to see all of you women here in technology. It's great to see, and if you can participate in some of the mentoring programs, mentor women, especially at even that middle school age or younger, because I think that's where we see a lot of the drop-off. So it'd be great to see more mentorship, participation in programs like Women in Technology and others to really drive some of that. A lot of times women don't have as much confidence. Help them with their confidence, coach them through that. I think the more we can all support our peers and fellow women, we'll succeed.
Absolutely. Brenna, are you seeing that as well? With younger women?
Yep, the mentoring, even especially starting at the younger ages, because we know that girls start to move away from technology as young as the 6th grade. So get involved in mentoring, and then on the career side, once you are working, if you're in a leadership position or feel you're in a position to talk to whoever does lead your team or your business. What are the changes that you can enact or that you want to see that make your division, your company, friendly to women that are there? Right? I'm in a position now because I run my department, and the mayor backs me up on that. And I'm very lucky. My office is 60% women, which is great. And I'm incredibly proud to say that. But I was less happy to see we're about to move into a new office, and as we're designing the new office space, I said, so which room is the nursing room? Right? And the women in my office are of the age where that matters, and I will also not always be CIO. I'll stay as long as I can, but I want that room to be there. And I said, which room is the nursing room? Like, which one, can you lock the door and has a comfortable chair and all those things? And I got this cross-eyed look that said, well, why do you need that? I'm like, because we're 60% women. There may be a nursing woman or two in the near future. So there's a lot you can do, and it's simple questions like that of what can you do in your office, either policies, just changes in whether it's whatever the accommodation is that makes your office a good place, the right place for everyone to work. Because equality is actually not just about women or people of color or minorities. It's about everyone being comfortable and doing their best work in that office. So what can you do, either as the boss or as someone who's willing to tell the boss what needs to be done?
Yeah, and actually, I think, Stephanie, I'd like to broaden the question a little bit as I ask you is, first of all, what we can do to support younger women, but in general, how do we support other women in the workplace? I think is a...
Sure, I think there are a couple of things. On the young women's side, we've got to fix our pipeline problem, right? And the way that happens is that we help them see all the value and all the opportunity in sticking with science and technology and not getting turned off. But moving, up to our current situation, I think I have two little observations here.
You lost your mic.
Lost my mic. Okay, it's back again. I think what it is about women, and we see this with girls, we have this terrible system/cycle that girls go through. Somewhere around middle school, they start being really bad to each other. I have a daughter. I've been on this journey with her. I remember it. So they start being bad in middle school. They stay pretty bad in high school, maybe get a little bit better. It's our job in life, in professions, to start being good to each other again. And there's nothing like having another female as a partner at work. The These two women have been fabulous partners to me at different points in time. There's nothing quite like it. We've got to support other women and be there and help them and get out of that high school, middle school thing. The other thing I've realized is I can hire tons of women. I have more than 50% women in my org. That's easy for me, right? They want to come work for me. What I need to do is I need to help my peers who are men hire women. And so I invest a lot of time on that.
Great. And Julia, what's been your experience?
I just agree on this front. The little small tact, it was a really interesting insight of, you do see all the stats of girls around 12 start to drop off of math and science. And there's studies that show, that boys' brains are developing differently than girls, and they see them falling behind and they lose confidence. But I actually think there's another really important insight to all the people who have sons out there, is that actually a lot of that contributed to, that girls feel like they won't be liked by boys if they're the smart math person. And the boys' acceptance and encouragement and promotion of that in the girls actually can change that in a pretty dramatic way. And I'm lucky enough, my children are this wonderful, very, very academic school, and I was talking with the math teacher about the drop-off and what we can do to stop it. And he's like, you know what, we don't actually statistically see that here, because here the boys think smart girls are cool. And they think that if you can do math, you're cool. And so I was like, that little thing has made statistically that school is broken from the norm on that front. So all of you with sons, myself included, smart girls are cool. So keep that.
Yeah. And I think
Go ahead.
it's actually an interesting week. I mean, it's a sad week, actually, to have that conversation with Sheryl Sandberg losing her husband, and who she spoke about so eloquently, and how he supported her, and how he always thought that smart girls were cool. And I think that was a big part of the legacy that was mentioned in the discussions of his life. So, yeah, I think it's super important for us to look not just at the ways that we support each other, but the ways in which men have to support women's careers. What I want to look at right now, and it was something we were talking about when we were all getting ready for this lunch, is what about role models? What about the other women who've inspired you, or even men, but certainly who are the people who have moved your career forward, or who you really felt you couldn't have gotten here without? And Brenna, I'm going to start with you.
I actually have two that are close to home. I had a great aunt, so this is my mother's aunt, who was, and so if you think about the generation that is, who was lucky enough to go to college at that age and get a degree in physics, which is pretty stunning. And she taught high school physics. And I remember doing my science homework in high school, like at her dining room table. We would go to her house after school, and I'd be working on, remember the vector calculations you would do? And she would walk through the living room without missing a beat and correct my math, in her head. And she was a smart girl, right? She was a smart woman. She wore the glasses. She embraced her intellect. And I just remember being so inspired by the fact that she wore her brains on her sleeve. And I never, ever wanted to hide whatever smarts I do have, because she never did. And then later in life, my mother-in-law, who I was just incredibly lucky to become very close to, was unbelievably smart, and she's a geneticist, raised 4 boys by herself, and actually had a very sort of active social life as well in terms of her community commitments, and always said that, and actually you said something very similar to this, which I thought was great, in terms of work-life balance, and this was specifically around nutrition, that if at the end of the month your kids have eaten everything they have to, that's fine. You've gotten it right. So she was just always very even keel, that you'll get it right as long as your focus is on the long game and over time. And she was incredibly accomplished, but very, very low key in those accomplishments. And she just took a very long view in how she got there.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Julia, do you want to talk a little bit about who inspired you?
Yeah, I picked two, too. My father was absolutely invaluable in my life. He believed in me from the day I was born to the day he passed away, and just always there for me, for anything, in any way, but it's always just believes in you. And there's also research that shows the father-daughter relationship is so critical in terms of what you believe in yourself. So the dads out there, it matters a lot. And believe in your daughters. I think that makes a big difference. And the other one I'll actually attribute to is, of all things, my high school swim coach. I was a very competitive swimmer, and I went to Olympic trials, and she kicked my butt every day, and I learned every day that I was stronger than I thought. And every day was so freaking hard, but every day I walked away, I was like, man, I didn't know I had that in me, but I did. And that taught me that I could apply that to all parts of my life, not just athletics. And so when I see that job and I'm like, oh, I don't know if I can do it, I'm like, I remember that practice I didn't think I could get through, and I did. And it gave me that kind of mental model of I'm stronger than maybe I think I am.
Great. Natalia?
So I know it's cliche, but I will say, well, I've got two. First one is my mother. And my parents are immigrants, so they came here to the United States. So she came in, didn't understand the language. By the time she was 18, had her first child. I'm one of 5. My mom graduated college and then got her master's degree with 5 kids, and then was a science and math teacher and became the curriculum developer for Chicago Public Schools. So she was an inspiration to me. There's 4 girls in my family, and all of them have been very successful because I think she believed in all of us and pushed us to be who we needed to be. One of my sisters works in data analytics. I work at Microsoft. Another sister works in HR, but she always pushed us all to be confident in the skills that we have and drove us. Then on the other side, from a career perspective, I actually had a great mentor from IBM, and she's a corporate VP at IBM and has been wonderful in guiding me through career choices, helping me with decisions. Similar life to mine. She was a single mom. She just got remarried recently, but helped me through some of those transitions. And she's in technology as well, so it was great to have her to help guide me.
Yeah. Stephanie?
Well, I guess I'll be yet another person to put my mom on the list. My mom, similar to yours, I think really instilled in us that we could achieve whatever we wanted to achieve as long as we tried and really put ourselves into it. She spent her life really investing in all of us and my father. My father she was that strong woman behind the successful male for a number of years, and then I believe I learned from her experience and saw her strength. She had a rough spot in her marriage. She had nothing professionally. She was basically the stay-at-home mom. And then when I was in high school, early high school, she went back, she finished college, which she had left to marry my dad, finished college, got an MBA, got a job at GE, and then subsequently at IBM, and really became an extremely, extremely successful professional in technology. And just watching what she was able to do when she realized, I got to get myself together here, and I need some stuff for me, was amazing. The other person who inspired me was Arlette Klein. She was my senior vice president at Empire Blue Cross Blue Shield, and I learned a couple things from Arlette. I learned the element of care. So Arlette was really with it. You did not mess with her, but she cared, and she showed she cared, and you knew she cared. You push you, but she'd be there. She also worked hard right alongside all of us. So.
Yeah, and what I think is nice about all of your experiences is that these are women who were close by. These are not distant role models. These aren't necessarily people who were famous. They didn't necessarily have an enormous career themselves. Some of them did, some of them didn't. But I think that emphasizes the importance of our own role as role models to the people closest to us, because it's a daily thing. It's not I saw somebody on TV or I saw somebody up on stage and then that was the thing that motivated me. It's the daily inspiration, it sounds like to me, that really made the difference to all of you. We're going to go back to our audience questions. There's the question of how do you break through to a management position as a woman? I actually think how do you break through to a management position as a man is an equally good question. I don't know if any of you have an inspiration. That's a tougher one. So I'm gonna take a volunteer.
I've got an idea. Okay. So I think you do it by starting to do it. There will be many opportunities while you're not a manager to manage. You can manage virtual teams, you can help others, you can mentor. And when you start to do that without being formally assigned it, you start showing people you're capable of doing it. You will be a logical next.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really
Expect.
I couldn't agree with you more, and I think that's some of the advice that I give to a lot of my mentees is show some of your leadership early. Actually volunteer for those V-Team opportunities. Volunteer to either, if you have opportunities to manage contractors or something else, but show your leadership skills early. People will recognize it and see it.
I want to go to the next question because I want to make sure that we get to this one. And this one's, how do you become a powerful and effective woman? And I'm going to let Julia take that one because I think you were a little...
Well, your answer was good.
Yeah, because it was a really great answer that we were talking about this before.
I forget what I said.
You said you're already there.
You are one.
You are one.
You are one.
You are one.
You just got to believe in yourself. No, it is. It gets back to that confidence, right? You're as powerful as you believe you are, and you get the respect that you command from other people, ultimately. And so if you command it and you believe in it, it actually turns out it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. And so there's moments where you might be a little bit shaky, but if you believe it, it actually becomes true if you stick with it. So it is about that inner strength and believing in that moment and commanding that respect.
Absolutely. And Brenna, I think you talked about that during your presentation, about you have to believe it first. That no one else is going to believe it if you don't.
No, absolutely. I think you got it right on the head. No one will respect you if you don't respect yourself, and you command what you expect from them.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Great. Well, then, let's see. There's also this is a Microsoft-specific question. There's how many board members do we have at Microsoft who are women?
2.
And how many have we had over the years? Because Stephanie,
We've had a number over the years. We have 2 right now on a board of 10, which is reasonable representation. They're great women, and over the years we've had 2 to 3 at different times. And actually, that's fairly in line with it's actually not too far off from our general population of women and women in leadership. We have 28% women, 17.5% in leadership positions, so fairly in line.
Yeah, that makes sense. So actually what I'd like to do now is open it up to questions from the audience. I believe that there should be mics out there. So if anybody has a question from the floor, we'd like to continue chatting with you a little bit about what you're interested in hearing about. Does anyone have a question? I see a raised hand. Great.
Yes, hello.
Can you please tell us your name and where you're from?
Yes, my name is Sigrid van der Wegen. I work at Microsoft in Belgium, Europe. First of all, thank you very much. My question is the following. I refer back to the interview that Satya had not so long ago, where it was said that we women should be more eager to ask for promotions and such. What's your feeling about that? Because I see that in my environment, that we don't dare enough asking for promotion, asking for a raise, as Julie already said, just going for that. What's your experience there, and what can we learn from that?
Who'd like to go first?
I can go first. I think this is a personal perspective, so it's not a corporate perspective, but I think I would agree with Satya. What I would say in managing a lot of people, a lot of the men that I've managed before are a little bit more assertive and push to ask for promotions, to ask for opportunities. And I think it's beholden upon us to make sure that we are there and we have the confidence in ourselves to ask for those opportunities and see those opportunities and not be afraid to take risks. Because I think sometimes people are afraid to take the risks. Don't be afraid to, and open yourself up to it, because there are a lot of opportunities out there.
Anyone else?
Well, I think that we think that asking is being pushy. There's a really fine, there's a lot of space between asking and being pushy. It helps your manager, for him or her to understand what's important to you and what you want in your career. I think that, in general, I would encourage men and women to be clear and to ask about what they want.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I would just to build on that a little bit. I think I talked to a lot of women who were like, "Wow, I don't want to be that jerk. You know that guy, and he's so obnoxious." And I'm like, we are so far from that you're worried about being like the top 5% of annoying, and you're like way down in the range. Like dialing it up ain't gonna make you that up there. So I think people worry about even going up a little bit because they see that thing, and I'm like, trust me, there's a long range between. So dialing it up, and again, back to as a manager and a leader, it's so helpful to know what people want. And people want different things. Some people want promotion. Someone want recognition. Someone want more money. Like if I can't fix problems I don't know about. So if I know what people want, then I can actually help address it. So it's not just advocating on your behalf. It's actually just being clear and look at that way. It might feel friendlier to do it.
Absolutely. And Brenna, how do you see that either for you or the women that you work with?
I mean, every corporation is different, so you need to understand the culture, but most corporations have a culture where self-promotion is important because your manager isn't going to know what you want, and they also may not know, depending on where you work. I know at IBM, because we were out on projects, et cetera, my manager who was doing my evaluations, who was responsible for my promotions and my raises, et cetera, would not necessarily know everything I had achieved in a year. It was actually up to me to inform them of everything I had gotten done. And I don't think it's actually natural for most women or most men to pat themselves on the back, but frankly, and this is a personal opinion, men are a little bit better at patting themselves on the back. And you need to get better at that and learn how to draw the line between self-promotion and bragging, because no one is going to sell yourself better than you are, and you need to be able to back it up with the facts, et cetera, and maybe get some background from like a client or whatever that was very happy from your work, but you need to put yourself out there and help your manager know why you deserve the promotion. So you're not asking for anything that you haven't earned.
Absolutely. And so I think that's, you've all said, being really clear and really oriented on the facts, but not hiding yourself just because you're worried about putting that information forward. Do we have another question? We'll go here. Yes, please. And your name and where you're from.
Hi, Jeanette Valdez, and I work remotely, so that changes often.
Yeah.
Where I'm from. Currently, it's Rochester, New York. So, in speaking about the transformation of the role of the IT professional, specifically regarding becoming that consultant and finding the business solutions, business solution to the need and the service delivery, that whole kind of newer way. So imagine if you're already there and you're like the only person doing that. Talk to me, if you can, about some advice to succeed in that area. How do you expand that, grow that, and have that kind of mentality catch fire if the rest is mostly men and they're not fanning those flames?
Would like to start?
I was the only woman on a team of men for 4.5 years. And that can actually be a pretty strong position to be in because you already stand out. It can be a little lonely, can be a little, so you need to be conscious of that's where you, but you can also you're already differentiated, so you can use that to your advantage, certainly, because your skills can be quite different if you can understand that and harness that, certainly. And I liked the men that I worked with. We had a very, very strong relationship, so it was actually a very good place for me to be. But use that differentiation, right? Begin to understand the strengths that you have that are different from theirs. And they're not necessarily going to be strengths that you have just because you're a woman. You have strengths that have nothing to do with the fact that you're a woman, certainly. But in any job, understand the strengths that you have that you bring to the team that differentiate you, and use those to make that the best job that you have. And in this case, some of them might be because you're the only woman on the team.
I'd say an opportunity like that. I think when you're driving change or trying to bring others along or grow something, nothing creates success like success, and nothing creates a change movement more than putting out a successful model. And so I think if you're finding something that's working, people will notice, and you can promote, right, and make sure they see it. But I think if you're doing something valuable and you let people see it, they'll tend to come along, especially where you're sitting. It sounds like you're in a place where we talked about is ripe for opportunity and growth and needing more of that. So the better work you do, the more successful you are. I think it's going to beget more success from there.
Yeah, I would agree. I think it's tying it back to impact and results. So, Julia talked about earlier about EQ and how that's important, the collaboration. But I think what you need to then do is take that next step and show the impact, results, and the success, and that's what drives some of the change.
And I think if you're in that position and you have that collaborative capability and you do start to build success, I agree with everything these folks have said. And what you could do is you could start to kind of create bite-sized things for the others in your org to benefit from. So, hey, just did this. Here are 3 learnings that I have from it, and just start to feed them that. A lot of people can get on board with collaboration. They can learn from you, and you may just have to teach them a little bit.
Great. Thank you so much. And then there at the back. And again, if your name and where you're from.
My name is Bridget, and I'm in education in IT. This is great that we have a forum for the women just to talk about this. But what's the best way to look for a mentor, another woman If you're not on LinkedIn,
So finding a mentor is our question. I don't want to.
Look at all the candidates you have in the room. Did you meet a few people? But seriously, I think events like this are great opportunities to just meet women who, we were sitting at the table and just, but we hadn't all met before. We found, I think each of us found something in common with you, Brenna, just by discussing things for 5-10 minutes. Right. I bet you found something in common with folks you didn't know today. Take advantage of that, carry that relationship forward. And peer mentoring, I guess the other thing I think, peer mentoring can be just as helpful as, super successful, extra special VP mentoring. You can learn a lot from your peers. We have little mentor circles that we do at Microsoft where there's no mentor, you're all in a circle helping each other. And you come into the room, and then more importantly, you go out of the room and you stay a ring, you stay a group, you support one another.
I think that I'll just reiterate. I think there's the formal mentor, and being clear about what you want and what you're looking for. You have to be strategic on that, because I know a lot of people are like, "Hey, will you be my mentor?" And I'm like, "Well, what are you looking for? Like, am I really the right fit?" And so, put some thought into what exactly are you looking to get out of that formal mentorship. But then I completely agree. It's just like the people who inspired us were the people who are around us every day. The people around you every day are actually your mentor network. And are you surrounding yourself with the people, and are you tapping into them as a peer mentor or as a colleague in the way that they can help you in those little decisions in the moment? And that can be, frankly, more important day in, day out than that formal mentor you meet with once a quarter.
Definitely.
Yeah, and I would say, to your point, you do need to identify what you want to have for the mentorship relationship. You have to identify goals for that. A mentor can be different than a coach. And I think that's an important distinction. Sometimes a coach is someone you may have there for you for a much longer period of time. A mentor sometimes can be just for specific attributes. And it's identifying those things that you want to work on and tapping into your own network. The other thing I would say too is sometimes it doesn't always have to be a woman for a mentor. I've had some fantastic mentors that are men that have really helped me in my career. Some were my bosses, some were just peers, some were actually higher level, but I've had some great men who were mentors and really helped in my career as well. So don't limit yourself just to women. I think women are great role models and they're important to have in your circle, but I think men are important as well.
Yeah, and I think we have time for one or two more questions. Yes?
Hello, my name's Larissa. I work at a university in Des Moines, Iowa. I often have ideas and I share them, and then they're kind of brushed off. Later down the line, of course, those things that I said, could make us more efficient or better actually happen, and it's like, gosh, I said that. So I just wanted to know what you guys think would be the best way, to have my ideas heard.
That's tough. That's a tough one. I will be honest with you, we had that question at Tech Ed last year, and we were totally stumped. That's the hardest one, because it's not as strict. You think you've said it the best way that you know how to say it. I think I would actually go back to Stephanie with the small things. I think with the demonstrating your idea in action in small ways first. I don't know if there's...
Yeah, I think a couple other thoughts. They're not going to be perfect. Sometimes putting out your idea in a big room it maybe isn't the way to go. You could kind of work around the big room and find some people who hear you one-to-one, kind of get some energy around your idea before you get into a big room. That can help sometimes. You can find, I guess, just people who can influence on your behalf. That's one thing that I've done in the past.
I agree. I think there's... Yeah, there's there is a balance between you had the idea and kind of feeling like I got formal credit in the moment in that room for it, but actually more importantly, I think, is that it actually got done. And how you actually get it done is that you go meet with the key people who are going to actually help you and align with you, and then you can feel incredibly proud of that getting done, whether or not you felt like you got heard in that room. We'll keep working on that, but you can still get what you need done without having that kind of moment in that way.
And if at some point in time, if you've helped seed ideas multiple times and your things are getting done and helping the organization, people will start to pattern match and figure out you're part of that, or you're behind it. So I think ultimately...
But you can also tell them.
Yeah, you can. Don't
forget to tell them, too. Yeah.
The other thing you can do, which is sort of along the lines of what you said, is when you have an idea, before you release it to the big group, is go find a, kind of along the line of a mentor, but go find a sort of gardener for your little idea and work with them. And like, I've got this great idea. How would I develop this? And see if you can find someone to sponsor you, right? This is the difference between a mentor and a sponsor. And and you may have to put in some extra time because this might be outside of what your main job is, but put in that extra time and see if they'll sponsor you in helping to develop it. So now instead of in that big room putting out an idea, because ideas are diffuse, right? They can belong to anybody. Now, next time you mention it, you and your sponsor are putting out a project. And it's a lot harder for the general community in that room to suck up a project because it's got more weight. So next time, look for a sponsor to help you build it out a little bit before you put it out to the general group.
I think we have time for one more question, and this was our very enthusiastic questioner.
Hi, my name is Hong Fei. I work for Microsoft. First, I want to thank you all for being the role model and also putting time back to the community. You are already helping the community. Thank you. So my question to you is, men and women are different. We work differently. We have different style. And the reality is, in IT, the leaders, majority of them are men. So I heard comments like, when they talk about a women leader, they would talk about, she's weird. Yeah, I know she's good, but she's weird. So what's your advice in working in the men-dominated world and not to be seen? Is it good to see being weird? Or can we not to be weird and blending? What's your experience in this and some advice? Thank you.
It's technology. Aren't we all weird?
I was like, who's calling who weird?
We're supposed to be weird. It's technology.
I think as a woman, you definitely, I don't think it's wrong to stick out. I don't know if I'd use the word weird. But I do think there's a balance as a female leader of, are you assimilating and are you just trying to blend in, and then are you losing who you are? And you can't be inauthentic. Like, that dog doesn't hunt for very long. So you kind of have to be who you are and pick your lines of, I know I work with a woman who insists on wearing pink every day, and I see some of you girls out there, and it's a statement. And you're like, this is my thing, and this is what I'm authentic, and I'm going to stand out, and I'm going to own that. And I think if you own it and you bring power to that, then it absolutely works. I think if you're not sure and you're being different and you're not confident in it, then it comes off awkward. But I think it's more embracing that and deciding the line you take. Even like simple things like my choice to put on a leather jacket at the keynote. I was like, none of those guys are wearing one of those things. I'm going to be different. It's a statement. So.
Definitely. Anybody else? Is there any?
No, I would agree. I think it's being authentic, it's being true to yourself and being confident in yourself. I think sometimes when you get into a room and you're the only woman amongst like 20 men, it's easy to feel like you need to try to fit in. But as long as you're true to yourself, I think you can succeed.
And I also think you can sort of switch the frame of reference, right? They may think you don't fit in because you're a woman. Well, think about, though, how you do fit in, right? Or if you're in a room full of coders and you're a coder, you do fit in. Right? They may think you don't because you're a woman. Well, who's looking at you because you're a woman? You're a coder. Or, when I go to a CIO conference, because I actually don't notice at work that I'm a woman because in Mayor Emanuel's administration, there's actually a boatload of women. It was actually of some note because he didn't notice he was doing it when he did it. And we all showed up and we're like, wow, his executive staff was like 45% women. So I don't notice it actually at work. And then I'll go off to some CIO conference. I'm like, oh my God, there's 3 of us. But we're actually all CIOs. So they may notice we're women. We're actually all CIOs, and we're in a room full of CIOs, which is dorky, right? So change the frame of reference. And actually, I've actually gone so far as to actually point that out. I'm like, we're in a room full of, sometimes it's a room full of data engineers. Like, there's other things going on in that room, so don't let them point out what's going on with you. Point out what's going on with them, We're in a room full of guys wearing Birkenstocks and socks. I was in that room on Monday. Like, point that out. It's not my high heels that are weird, because that's normal. You're in Birkenstocks and socks. So don't let them set the frame. You set the frame.
And
Take the control.
Yeah, and I think the other thing I'd do is go back to what you said earlier. Flip things on its head a little and say, okay, I'm weird, different, whatever, that means the day in a meeting I choose to open my mouth, I'm going to be heard because I sound different than anyone else in this room. They all kind of can sound alike. I sound different. People are going to hear me. So take advantage of that.
Great. I think we're past time, so we're going to wrap up. I know the ladies on the panel are going to be here for a few minutes if people want to come up and speak to them individually. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you so much to our panelists for a great discussion.